Hi, this is Jodi Smith, and I have with me
Duffy McClelland.
Duffy, and I are both on the board of directors, and I'm so excited to have you here with me, Duffy. Once a month, I am hoping to share a new tool. It might not be a new tool to you guys, but it's an idea I have of a tool that I'll be sharing once a month. And each month, I'm going to ask a different board of directors to join me so that you guys get to know them as well. And Duffy, you and I have been together for a couple of years now, and it's been great.
Yeah, I've been on the board for this is my third year, and I've really enjoyed it so far.
Yeah, even though we have to do this, the Zoom thing.
Right.
So a couple of weeks ago, I called Duffy and I said, "Here's my other tool, and this is." Please know in the future I'll be sharing tools that GRAR also provides, but this is a tool that I use, and it's more of a symbol than anything. But the tool I have now, and I shared with Duffy, and Duffy's going to have an idea here as well. What he thinks of this is my idea is a sponge. The idea of having a sponge, and I've got a sponge here, so the visual. And when you look up the word sponge means to absorb. It means bounce. And it means clean up. And I'm going to share just a couple of stories, but I'll have Duffy, do you have anything that you would like to add on what you think of when you hear the word sponge?
Well, it's certainly a good analogy for a lot of what we do in this business. So much of it is listening to clients, listening to their needs, and quite frankly, listening to some of the frustrations they have along the way. And I think learning to be a better sponge is important for sure.
Yep. And that sponge is to absorb what they're saying, keep, when they're emotional, they're frustrated. It's just, if they're frustrated with the other party as a result of, boy, Jodi, I really didn't want to give that 45 days possession. I'm kind of irritated about it. It's not, that's where you're just a sponge. You just kind of retain that information. You do not need to share that with the listing agent. It only creates some frustration. That listing agent might not be a sponge, and they might just go ahead and share that with a seller, and the seller will go, well, they offered it. Why are, and all of a sudden you've got a buyer and a seller that are upset with each other when they didn't need to be. And that's where I'm saying too, we're a sponge. We sometimes we just have to retain information that we hear and leave it alone.
There are certainly times we all experience where sometimes our clients, seller or buyer, they just want to be heard, and not necessarily transmitting to that other agent everything that gets said.
Mm-hmm.
And believe you me, there are certainly those times where people need to be not only heard, but corrected and make sure they have a good understanding. It isn't always about just listening and not speaking. Making sure they understand completely what they've gotten themselves into and why things are the way they are. But when it comes to some of that more, immaterial discrepancies, we do have to absorb that. Mm-hmm. And not let it, blow up the transaction or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Another thing was, bounce. Bounce is something where if you've got a client calling you and they're really angry and frustrated with the lender, not because of the lender, but just because they found out something on their credit, or they are just, a lot of times I will bounce more questions to them. Like, I want to find out something, like they're actually acting a little out of character from how I know them. I'm like, okay, something's going on, kind of have your radar on and go, kind of bounce some questions to them. Go, is everything going okay with work? And it's like, well, no, I just lost, I just found out, we are getting bought out, or, ask more questions to your client when they're frustrated. And just like any relationship, when somebody's frustrated, if you seek to understand.
I think another thing to remember too is that when we express stuff that we've been told that isn't necessarily pertinent to their transaction, it's just more of a personal discrepancy. You want to remember your level of professionalism as well. So much of what we do is cooperating with other agents, and you'll likely have to work with them again. So you want to make sure you maintain that level of professionalism. When something is a big deal, when something hasn't been transmitted or appropriately, you want to make sure that it does come across as clear and effective. but we can all fall into the weeds a little bit from time to time, and not expressing that with the other agent or with the other party will help you at times. And a lot of that stuff works itself out along the way anyway.
It
We all
does.
have those transactions where we think, oh my gosh, you can kind of look down the road and see a problem that might develop. And you think, boy, this is going to be a big issue. And rather than blow it up before it actually happens,
Mhm.
save that energy. And sometimes things do work out without having, to show your card, so to speak.
Yeah, I like that. So you don't have to show them all right away either. It might be just hold on to that, absorb it for a while. If you need to use it later, go for it or share it. Sometimes a great example would be if I know that the seller was, or if I knew my seller was pretty upset about the washer and dryer, I don't need to convey that to the other agent. But if 2 weeks later I'm negotiating the appraisal, if we have a appraisal issue, then I could bring it up. Just say, you know what, just to let you know, the washer and dryer was something that they really didn't want to give up. We gave that up, so I wanted, and the reason I say that is now I can express, hey, we gave something up they didn't really want to give up. I want to remind them of that. But you don't have to do it in showing it with, where it was a problem 2 weeks ago. It's a problem now that we have a $2,000 discrepancy on the appraisal. But
Right. That's a really good point, Jody. We all want to get to a closing with no hard feelings,
mhm,
and have people get what they bargained for. And sometimes we can manufacture a problem that didn't necessarily have to happen if we would have just been that sponge, listened, absorbed it, not necessarily forgotten it, but just kind of held it in your back pocket, and hoping that we can get to that closing and facilitate everything that needs to happen for the buyer and the seller.
boy, I couldn't have said it better. That was great, Duffy. And I really appreciate it.
All
Okay.
right. Thanks, guys.
Yep. Have a great week.
See ya.